What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Say no more. Honestly, this came out of the blue. For years, WWE had been teasing a potential return to the mask for Kane, but it never materialized. First up was that bizarre storyline featuring an imposter. Then there was the whole sack thing, which nobody seems to talk about. But in 2011, the mask was finally back. I remember at the time, I wasn't watching much WWE. I had one eye on the shows, though. And the return, it caught me off guard. I felt as if the mask was in the past, but they decided, you know what? Time for the return. So right now, let's go back to a time where Zack Ryder was getting pushed literally and figuratively. So as I mentioned, WWE never seemed to pull the trigger on a Masked Kane return. There was some money in it, obviously, because the masks sell. Plus, Kane had been doing the same thing for nearly 8 years, and it could have been an opportunity to switch it up. At the time, he was out for about 5 months due to fracturing his fibula. Not only that, but they had Mark Henry take him out as well. Months passed by. We don't hear about Kane at all until October, when some pictures of him leaked. His hair had grown and speculation arose over a potential return of the mask. Fans thought there has to be a reason for the hair change. Obviously it was leading to something in their eyes. Then again, it could have meant anything. Then came the November 21st, 2011 episode of Raw. A demented vignette randomly aired on the show, and an importance was placed on the mask. Commentary seemed spooked, but obviously didn't acknowledge who it was. Then the next one clearly showed Kane's face, but it also teased potential feuds with the likes of John Cena, CM Punk, hell, even The Rock, or they just wanted to play something there. I'm going with the latter. Now, why was Kane returning with the mask? According to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, WWE wanted to break a certain record. One of the reasons Kane is coming back under the mask is because the company wants to set a world record for most people wearing masks at this year's Mania in Miami. That's a very random reason why he's coming back, and I was reading up on reports at the time, and some even said that he was going to come back and feud with Mark Henry, or even return without the mask, as if nothing happened. But anyways, fast forward to the end of the Slammies. John Cena and Mark Henry are going at it when all of a sudden the pyro goes out and Kane's back. He's wearing a metal mask, Mark Henry's pissing himself in bolts, and obviously it's logical of Kane to go after Henry, right? Because he's the same man that took him out, but instead he chokeslammed Cena, signifying the beginning of a rivalry. Oddly enough, for the length of John Cena's career, he's never had a full program with Kane. Anyways, on the December 19, 2011 episode of Raw, John Cena addressed the events of last week. As expected, he was talking nonsense, mentioning The Rock, which was expected, but despite that attack, he felt that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. John Cena felt that if it was an accident, then he'll let bygones be bygones, but if that's not the case, it's a whole different story. All of a sudden, the former champion Mark Henry interrupted, and he felt that there was unfinished business between himself and John. He got annoyed by the monologue full of jokes, all while the crowd chanted "sexual chocolate." As they were ready to fight, Kane made his way out. Mark exited the ring, but it seemed as if Kane hadn't forgotten about July. He tried getting out of the situation, begging for mercy because his leg was hurting, but that wasn't why Kane was out here. He had a whole other target: John Cena. The champ tried attacking, quickly bringing the fight, and initially this seemed to work, but Kane had that return boost. There was no way in hell he was going to get dropped 1 week into his return, so John Cena was brutalized. John's whole demeanor was slowly transitioning into a state of fear and anger. After calling Chicago an important piece of WWE history, he finally acknowledged Kane. Cena knew very well that hellfire and brimstone was imminent, but he didn't give a damn. He was straight up calling the Big Red Monster. Turns out, it's The Miz. Later that night, though, the Big Red Monster finally broke his silence. His reasoning for bringing back the mask was because, in essence, at the core, it's his true self. John Cena refused to let him finish the explanation, but still, though, he was warning John not to get near the ring. Why? Because he didn't want to fight now. He wanted to talk. Kane's belief is that John Cena had led the fans astray. Talking about rising above hate, well, guess what? The world's dark. He felt that it's okay to hate because humans are hateful by nature. Rather than rising above it, it's natural to embrace the hate. Rise above was simply a fraudulent myth in Kane's eyes. And basically, at its core, Kane knew that John Cena didn't enjoy the hate he was receiving from the fans. Embracing the hate would put John at ease, at peace with himself. But by the looks of it, he wasn't going to do that. Let's go Cena. Cena sucks chance intensifies. Kane then gets a bunch of the crowd to chant Cena sucks, and he began looking on in disappointment, as if his true self was slowly coming to life. Mixed reaction from the crowd, and with the show ending the way it did, speculation from the fans grew. I remember at the time a lot of people believed that the heel turn was imminent, with WrestleMania 28 on the horizon. It felt like the perfect time to turn John. With regards to Kane, another superb promo. He just has that skill to speak so eloquently. It reminds me of his world title run where he had amazing promo after amazing promo. The following week, the first Raw of 2012, I should note, John Cena spoke about rise above hate. Now, the foundations of his beliefs were not phased one bit according to himself. Even though he was emotional last week, it wasn't towards the fans. He refused to turn his back on them just because Kane said so, and he thanked them. He tried explaining why he refused to turn his back on them, but Kane interrupts. He promised to show John Cena the true power of hate that night, and fast forward to the end of the night. Cena and Zack Ryder managed to best Mark Henry and Jack Swagger, random tag team. Ryder's leg was hurting at the worst possible time because the Big Red Machine music played. Cena was ready for a fight, but he opted to appear from under the ring, and after suffocating the champ, he set his sights towards the US champion. Ryder was being dragged into Hornswoggle's house, but luckily though, John Cena made the save before an explosion came from under the ring. There was some great potential in the storyline, you know, like Kane could have been the one who revealed John Cena's true self. Once again, Kane on Monday criticized the fans for not embracing hate despite the fact that they hate everything. You know, when they chant Cena sucks, it's a clever way of saying they suck. Regarding Zack Ryder, John Cena delayed the inevitable. Unlike the fans, he actually gets what he wants. In this case, it's consequences. You know, he wants Cena to pay the price. He interrupted and sprinted towards the monster. He delivered several strikes, close onto the outside, and John was showing intensity. They made their way to the back, and at this point, Kane, of course, had the advantage. Cena tried his best to knock down the monster, but found no success, and as a matter of fact, he just disappeared. Sort of like Zack Ryder's push. Meanwhile, Eve was showing some worry over Ryder's situation. You know, he was claiming that there was nothing to worry about, but obviously, he was lying. Kane then interfered in her business, causing her to panic. Zack Ryder made the save and ran towards his vehicle. The flat tire trope comes into play, and John Cena, on the other hand, was busy with Dolph Ziggler. After the commercial, Zack Ryder was still fixing the tire, and John Cena was putting a whooping on Ziggler. All of a sudden, the Titantron randomly showed Zack Ryder, and again, he was still busy with that damn tire. At this point, he was better off running. Kane, of course, attacked him and even chokeslammed him through what looks like a bunch of crates. John abandoned his match with Ziggler and went looking for Kane, who wasn't that hard to find. He suffocated him with ease and ended with Kane on top. Shortly afterwards, John Laurinaitis booked Cena and Kane for the Royal Rumble. With the Devil's favorite demon promoting this whole embracing the hate thing, John was actually becoming more angry and aggressive. He obliterated Jack Swagger before the bell even rang, and Zack Ryder, meanwhile, lost his title. He was obviously ready to return the favor to Kane. You know, he indirectly cost him the match by injuring his back, so John Laurinaitis was going to book them in a Falls Count Anywhere match. As expected, Ryder was destroyed. Cena couldn't interfere because he was barred from ringside, and Ryder already had a bad with the rib injury, but Kane's methodical approach made things even worse. To top it all off, he chokeslammed Ryder through the stage, and Eve unintelligently got near the monster, which led to bad movie trope number 2. John Cena makes his way out, and Kane's like, I'm out. Ryder was stretchered out of there along with his push and was loaded into an ambulance. Eve blamed John, telling him that he's done enough, and this led to one of the most random looks ever. So Josh Matthews tried interviewing Cena, who opted to shove him, and Wait a minute. Why in the hell is this edited out? Again, I was laughing my ass off when I saw this for the 100th time while I was making this video. I remember seeing this the day after the episode, and was damn near convinced that the heel turn was coming. I just had that feeling that slowly but surely, John Cena, one way or another, was going to embrace the hate. Now, about their match at the Rumble, yeah, it wasn't all that. I don't like it. These two just didn't have the best matches together. I just gotta mention that. Okay, John immediately brought the fight. Didn't take long for Kane to stop his momentum. Cena quickly tried wrapping it up with the AA, but failed. Kane took control, and John did have his bright spots, but it never materialized to something else. That is until he locked the STF. From there, it was mostly back and forth. Then they made their way to the outside, brawling, and the ref calls for the bell, meaning it was a double countout. Just as the match was getting started, it concluded. Like, the crowd was starting to get into it. Cena tried his best to dismantle Kane, but he was unstoppable. Coincidentally, they were near Zack Ryder's locker room, and so Kane barged in and suffocated the poor guy. He then brought him to the ring. Eve ran in there begging for mercy, but her request was denied. A damaged John Cena sprinted to the ring, but found no success as well. And that's the match. Yeah, I didn't like it. It was pretty boring. It was very uneventful. Like, if you miss, you're not going to be like, oh my god, I missed this match. It's not something you should go out of your way to see. I mean, the feud itself wasn't the best as well, and like I said, I highly doubt any one of you is going to be really interested in watching it. After Eve's match with Beth Phoenix the next night, which I should know was less than a minute, Kane randomly showed up on the Titantron. As expected, he held John Cena responsible for what went down these last few weeks, and felt that Eve was the perfect candidate to send a message to him. And there he is. John Cena, of course, ran down there to make the save, but unlike last time, he was showing way more intensity and stood his ground. Kane, for the first time in a long time, was actually bested, and by the looks of it, he was actually embracing the hate. Nice change of pace compared to the usual. Knowing that John Cena was damn near unstoppable on this night, Kane ran away. The following week, he was randomly stalking Eve, and man, was the storyline so damn good. So good on the opposite day, of course. Kane was so desperate to have Cena embrace the hate. While he's close to his goal, John's still not there yet, and for some odd reason, Kane was so afraid of himself. He literally mentioned this. I don't get it. Is he afraid of the pain he can inflict? I assume it's something like that. If you thought this was bad, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Kicking off the final Raw before the pay-per-view, which I should know is featuring an ambulance match between Cena and Kane, the Big Red Monster promised that somebody's going to take a ride in that vehicle. Zack Ryder, though, was busy with Valentine's Day. John suggested he get away, but the man couldn't be dealt with, so he was going to bring Eve to Ryder. Yeah, how about that? Well, Kane wanted to take her somewhere and Cena wasn't having it. She managed to escape, and John, being the good friend he is to Zack Ryder, tested her lips. He couldn't believe this, and that's a whole other story. Go check out the burial of Zack Ryder, or whatever the hell that video I made on about a year and a half ago. That's where I talk about it. At the end of the night, Kane once again addressed John Cena. He was proven right with what transpired recently. Cena was really embracing the hate, and Zack Ryder, well, it's best we don't talk about it. One thing I'll say, though, is that I've seen this image one too many times. Eve crying and Ryder on his back. So that's the build of the match. Even though Cena was starting to fight back, Kane still had a grip on him. That's basically the story in a nutshell. What I find funny, though, is that whatever John Cena did, he was going to main event that year, and poor CM Punk didn't stand a chance. Anyways, as John Cena's shirt at the time said, he rose above hate. Wasn't easy, though. Okay, let's talk about the match quickly. Cena in the early going brought the fight. Slowly, the big monster was draining him. He got suffocated with the glove and was placed on a wheelchair because, it's an ambulance match. He finally fights back in Zack Ryder's Kane. He forced himself into Booker's Fave 5, and things were looking bright for the champ until he walked into a chokeslam. He placed him on the stretcher, dragged him to the ambulance, and Cena, though, was hard-headed. The aggression was brought forth once more, and Kane just so happened to be the victim. They fought atop the ambulance. Kane attempts a chokeslam. Nope. Cena instead hits the AA. Mixed reaction. John grabs him, tosses him into the ambulance, and was victorious. Not the best match. It was pretty plotting in my opinion, These two, they just didn't have good matches against each other in this feud. Now, with regards to the story, it should have been more grand. What I mean is that Masked Kane deserved better than a Zack Ryder hit job and an FU off the ambulance. At the end of the day, it was just Kane in a mask. That's what I'm saying. What I feel should have happened is that the mask should have unlocked a whole other side to him or something. I'm not the one booking, they should figure it out. But yes, it just wasn't that good. It was just a stopgap till WrestleMania for John Cena. That's all. With that said, on the March 2nd, 2012 episode of SmackDown, Kane randomly went after Randy Orton of all people. The Viper tried his best to stop the monster but failed initially. They fought inside the ring, outside, and Orton seemed to match Kane's level of aggression, but he wasn't fresh. Add to that, he had a lingering shoulder injury, so of course Kane stood tall. He grabbed the mic and welcomed Orton back because it had been nearly 2 weeks since Randy Orton last competed. Nobody understood why Kane attacked him, but it's odd to think that these two had never feuded. Likewise with the John Cena thing. They're both top guys, yet a feud hadn't occurred yet. After beating R-Truth on Raw later that week, Randy Orton appeared. He had a very vengeful look on his face, wanting to attain payback. Truth distracted Kane long enough for Orton to hit the RKO, and then he grabbed the mic and told him that it's good to be back. Since Kane does not take an attack of any kind lightly, he returned the favor on SmackDown, and it resulted in an evenly matched brawl in the crowd. At this point, you're wondering, why in the hell is Kane angry with Randy Orton? Yeah, we didn't get an answer yet. Kane just teased Orton with the pyro on Raw, but later that week on SmackDown, Orton finally addressed this. He thought it was odd that he was being the hunted, not the hunter, and Orton didn't mind a collision course of epic proportions, but wanted to know why Kane chose him. Unlike John Cena, he actually embraces hate and vice versa. Pyro goes out, darkness for 10 seconds, and there he is. Finally, an explanation. While Kane preferred to leave Orton in the unknown, he asked nicely. All of a sudden, a video package played of that street fight, the street fight that left Kane out of action. He despised everything about that night. Why? Because he was a poor excuse of a human being. He's shaking hands, he's limping, but that man was completely gone. He's wiped out. Kane needed closure, and he refused to rest until Orton was decimated. Viper was ready for a fight, though, but it wasn't going to happen. Kane opted to have Orton's destruction, his dismantling, at WrestleMania 28. A week later, Randy Orton finally struck with an RKO on Kane, and there wasn't much intensity or heat coming from the story. Other than what I mentioned, there was a tag team match, but with regards to their match at WrestleMania, it's honestly forgettable. It's not bad or anything like that, but it's one of the last things I think of when I hear WrestleMania 28. Oddly enough, during the match, you can hear the fans chanting Daniel Bryan, but they managed to convince them, they managed to turn it around. Anyways, match was pretty slow until the final third when they went all out on offense. Best spot, of course, was the massive chokeslam for the top as it gave Kane the shocking victory, and it was much deserved. The guy had been putting over talent for several years, and nobody did the same for him. I don't think anybody expected him to win it. Did you? Oddly enough, though, they had a no disqualification match booked for that week's SmackDown. Obviously, there was more intensity for this one, and it was much better than the WrestleMania match. Also, I gotta mention that it served to be a precursor to their rubber bout at Extreme Rules. After the commercial break, Kane was finally in control. Orton took punishment and refused to stay down. He capitalized on Kane's mistake and thus began the comeback. He beat him up for about 2 minutes before Kane brought in the chairs. Didn't stop him though because Randy DDT'd him onto it, and his RKO attempt went south and Kane used the chair. Orton kicks out after several shots, chokeslam doesn't go well, and instead Kane bumps into the exposed steel and boom! RKO. Good match. Way more enjoyable than the Cena matches. The feud though wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Kane gave praise to Orton last week, but he felt that it wasn't right to end this thing so soon. You know, he was having fun. He was having so much fun that he opted to attack Cowboy Bob Orton. Orton sprinted to the back, and once he saw his father, Kane blasted him with a pipe. So now the feud's kicking into a different gear. Even though his schedule was booked, Kane still found time to destroy Zack Ryder. Afterwards, he grabbed the mic and spoke about Friday. He revealed that like his father, Orton went down easily. Took a while for the Viper to respond, but he did just that on SmackDown. While his father will be fine, it's a whole different story with Kane. He was ready to show him how sick he could be, and Kane, meanwhile, was still talking about that attack. Hell, even questioned Orton's manhood, but he was quickly silenced. Why? Because Randy brought Paul Bearer into this. What is up with everybody trying to tie him up? There was Edge, there's The Undertaker, Stone Cold, and now Orton. This time, though, Randy locked him in a freezer. Kane was livid, but in order for this newfound dominance to work, he didn't go after him. He didn't care that his father was stuck in the freezer. Suddenly, Randy Orton made his way out to the arena and a brawl ensued. Orton found a pipe and repeatedly blasted Kane with it to send him running. And about Paul Bearer, well, Kane had a change of heart. He freed his father, only to quote-unquote say, "You could say from me." On the final SmackDown before Extreme Rules, Michael Cole interviewed Randy Orton. He asked him if there's a way to stop Kane, and Orton's like, "The devil can't unleash hell like I will Sunday." Jinder Mahal, of all people, interrupted. He was talking about how they're going to kill each other Sunday, and as expected, he took an RKO. With regards to the match at Extreme Rules, good. No doubt in my mind was it Kane's best match up to this point, from December all the way up to now. Of course, False Count Anywhere rules. Orton quickly went on the attack initially, but it was no match for Kane's intensity. The Viper responded with several lead pipe shots before brawling in the crowd, back and forth action before they made their way to the staging area. The fight spilled into the back where Kane was in control, and then Zack Ryder got involved, leading to Orton bouncing back. Soon enough, they made their way back inside the squared circle where Orton was doing a number on Kane. He was building that momentum, delivering chair shots, but unfortunately, the steel post stopped him dead in his tracks. Not for long though, as he responded with the superplex. As Randy's looking to wrap it up, Kane catches him with a chokeslam, so he opts for a tombstone on top of a chair. That plan backfired, and Kane was on the receiving end of an RKO. 1, 2, 3, cool. Back and forth action that got the crowd popping. Nobody had the outright advantage for long. But yes, that's the feud. And that's Kane's return. From here, he messed with AJ Lee before feuding and subsequently teaming with Daniel Bryan. In all honesty, this return was subpar. You know, it should have been much better than it was. Like, the feud with John Cena had great potential, and had it concluded with Cena turning heel, accepting this hate, embracing it, I think people would talk about it positively. As for the Randy Orton storyline, I don't like the feud itself. It's not that interesting, but the matches were good in my eyes. You know, they weren't bad. But yes, like I said, Kane's return, it should have been much bigger, much more epic than it was. So yeah, what you guys think of Kane's return? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a chokeslam on the like button and perhaps the tombstone on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.